Oh, hello, everybody. Welcome to this episode of Be the Wolf. I am here today with continental drifter Ralph Velasco. Funny, we just talked about making sure we could pronounce everybody's names, and then I just went blah. All right, so he is a full-time travel photographer and an international tour organizer, and he has created and led over 120 highly rated international tours in over 30 countries on 7 continents. So he knows a thing about travel and photography, but we're going to talk about some of those entrepreneur ups and downs that I know some of you have experienced. That place when do you actually take the leap and let go of the gigs that might be paying your bills to actually follow your dream? And a lot of us entrepreneurs have gotten into our businesses because we love something. We're so passionate about it and we want freedom. But a lot of entrepreneurs are just stuck grinding and miserable. So, we're going to talk about Ralph's journey to finding the freedom and doing what he loves. And before we dive into that, Ralph, can you tell us a little bit more about what you do as a travel photographer and tour organizer? Give us the juice.
Sure. So for the past 16 years, I've been a small group travel organizer. So I organize small group trips of anywhere from 6 to 10 people or so, just depends on the trip. We go to all different parts of the world from Antarctica to Cuba, India, Cambodia, Vietnam, all over Europe. And it's a wonderful thing. I started out more teaching photography on the trips, but now they're more cultural tours. And of course, everyone's some sort of a photographer. So I do provide photography instruction if people are looking for that. Always trying to get people better pictures of their travels. But I'm also an author, and I've just recently, this past year, come up with 3 new books, and they're all about mindful and intentional travel. So everything's related to travel. I'm all about helping people to be better travelers, better photographers, and just to have a better time on their trips.
I love it. And a lot of people don't know, but one of my first businesses, which really failed. I mean, technically it was always in the black, but it didn't do that well, was my photography business. And I was an artist. I guess you always are an artist if you're an artist. So that's still in my heart. But I didn't have the gumption to let go of my safety net jobs to actually make my dream happen. I did that with this business, so I have grown since then. Now, here's the other question before we really dive into your story that I would like to know, and I'm sure my audience would like to know, why is it that you do what you do? Why is it important to you? Why is the travel and the leading tours, why is that important to you?
Well, I've always been a traveler. I've always enjoyed traveling internationally from when I was 15 years old and I studied in Spain for a summer. The next summer, I was a volunteer in Peru. Next summer, I volunteered in Venezuela. And the next summer, I studied in Mexico City for 2 months. So I've always been a traveler since fairly young. And I never thought that I would figure out how to make a living from it because back then, when I was starting my career, it wasn't that easy. And it's not easy now, but it's easier because we've got digital photography, the internet, social media, and on, cell phones, everything that helps us with travel. So it's a lot easier to travel these days and a lot easier to organize travel for yourself or for other people, which of course is what I do. but I just love to share the world with people. And so if I could get paid to travel, I'll never be a billionaire doing this, but I've led a life that a lot of people envy. It's certainly not all fun and games, but it's fantastic. And if something happens to me tomorrow, I've led quite a life that I have no regrets about. Certainly, I regret not investing in Bitcoin like 15 years ago, but I don't have any standard regrets.
A lot of business owners, they're so focused on how much money they're going to make, how much money they're going to make. It's all about that coin. And there are so many super successful people that have made a lot of money. And when they get to their deathbed, they have so many regrets because they didn't live their life. They may have made a lot of money. They may have been, quote, successful by societal standards, but they didn't really live their life. They were consumed by trying to have more and more and more and more. And I recently was in a meditation just randomly, and I went down that path of death and dying. And I looked really at my life and the things where I felt I really lived, those moments that I felt I really lived. And I had a bunch of them in my childhood, not many in my 20s and 30s, and even the early part of my 40s. But later, as I started doing the work that I do now for people and with people, that I started to have those moments and those flashes of where I really lived. And there's things that are super important to me in my life. And I know you have things that are super important to you in your life. And those things, and when we do things in alignment with those things, those are the moments that we really live. And that when we have a lot of them, we can walk away from our life at the end and be, wow, I really had a successful life.
No doubt about it. Yeah, I mean, it's not about money for me because no one can take it with them. Doesn't matter how much money you die with, it's how you lived. To me, it's always been about quality, not quantity. Not wanting to live to 120, but I want to live quality years while I can. And so those experiences, I'm much more into experiences and not spending money on things. I went to minimalist about 13 years ago, probably before it was really a word. And it was one of the best days of my life was getting rid of 90% of that stuff and getting things down to next to nothing. And now I really felt freedom. And so every experience since then has been mostly wonderful. So to me, it's about spending time and any money on experiences, not on things.
Well, and that is what your business is all about, these experiences. And one of the things about travel that people don't realize is when you travel, yes, you get out of your comfort zone and all of that, but a big piece of it is that you have to rely on yourself in a different way. And you have to have some belief and faith in yourself to be able to go and have these adventures. And I believe that when we do things that push us a little bit out of our comfort zone and have to rely on that which is within us, those are the moments, those are the things that are the most fulfilling when we stretch our boundaries and we rely on ourselves to actually be able to do that. And for some people, that is getting mastery at a skill. That could be that stretch and relying on what's within you. But those are the moments, I think, and from everybody I've talked to, that feel the most fulfilling. And travel was going to do that. It's going to stretch you no matter what. There's going to be discovery and stretching.
Yeah, that's for sure. You push the boundaries of your own self and see what you're made of, and it's great. That's what I love about travel. I was just telling someone the other day that what I love about travel is what I think a lot of people dislike about it. I like the different languages and money and customs and traditions and perspectives. So I like all that different stuff. I mean, that's why I travel. That's why, I stay at home if you're looking to just see what's the same as at home. So I like to go out and especially get different perspectives from people and learn from other people around the world.
Absolutely. And as entrepreneurs, we have consciously or subconsciously chosen a path of being stretched. So let's talk about your path. Now, you went to school for business, yes?
Yes.
Okay. And you opened your first business. Tell us about your first business.
Yeah, so I went to the Indiana University School of Business and graduated there knowing that I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I wasn't looking for the corporate job necessarily. I grew up in an entrepreneurial family. My family comes from the restaurant industry, so I'm third generation. So what I did is I bought a restaurant right out of college in my hometown, and I ran that for several years. And I was 21, 22 years old with my own business and a lot of responsibility, and it was good training grounds. And so I eventually sold that and did a round the world trip. And so I spent 5 months traveling around the world by myself. And again, that was before cell phones or the internet where you could get information easily. That was old school where you had to send away for brochures and things like that.
Yeah, you had to carry maps with you
Oh,
and
yes, yes, maps. Oh my god. No cell phone, so you had to find a phone. Did you ever hear of a poste restante? Do you know
Mm,
what that is?
no.
It was way and this was back in 1988, and it's a way my parents could send me a letter, and it would just you could just send it to, Ralph Velasco, Poste Restante, London. And it would get to the main post office in London, and I could go there, ask for it, and I would get it. And my friends used to send me stuff, but that was old school.
Yeah, that's kind of like I walked the Camino de Santiago through Spain,
Nice.
and you could send stuff to the post office for yourself, or people could send stuff to the post office for you, and then you'd go to the post office in that town and pick it up.
Oh,
Similar
interesting.
thing, I
Okay.
think they do something similar on the Appalachian Trail as
Okay.
well.
Yeah. Did you
Um,
go through Asturias and that part of
I
Spain?
did the northern route, the Camino del Norte. So I went through Bilbao and Santander and yeah, just the coastal route across the northern
Awesome.
part of
Yeah.
Spain.
I was just there in November. Fantastic.
Yeah, it was pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Lots of challenges, walking 500 miles.
Yeah.
Okay, so you sold that first business. I had wondered why you got into the restaurant business, but now it makes sense if your family was in the restaurant business. And then you did the travel. Now, I'm curious because you knew you wanted to be an entrepreneur. Were you thinking about in the back of your head, how could I somehow make a business out of travel?
Absolutely. Back then, we had a family friend that had an import export business. And so that was my idea that, okay, I'm going to get into the import export business, buy and sell products or whatever. And that was how I was going to get in. It never happened, but I'm glad it didn't because I'm so much happier, I'm sure, doing what I'm doing now than had I done that.
Yeah, it's funny how sometimes we think we're taking all these wrong turns, but somehow we end up right where we're supposed to be. So you came back, did you open another restaurant? Is that what happened?
No, then I came back and I got my real estate license because I wanted to start buying real estate properties and flipping them back then. That never happened. I spent a lot of money just learning the business and not making any money in real estate. and not having any to invest eventually.
What do you think held you back?
I just wasn't great at sales, I guess. And that was the first time I moved out to California actually to work with my roommate from college who had restaurants out in California. So I went out there and I worked for him for about a year, managing two of his restaurants. And then I ended up moving to Mexico City to get my master's in international business. So I figured if I'm going to get an MBA, it should be an international MBA, and I might as well do it internationally.
Right. I'm curious, what drove the decision to get your MBA?
Well, because at this point I was probably 28 or 29, and I didn't have any real business experience other than being an entrepreneur. So I felt if I'm going to catch up with my colleagues, I probably need to get an advanced degree to get that jump, maybe make up for some of the real world big business job experience I didn't have because I'd always been in real estate, restaurant, etc.
It's really interesting. I had a client and she had gotten her MBA and she did it because she had a business partner who was a man, and she was always saying that they never took her seriously. So she went and got her MBA to have that title so that people would take her seriously, because internally she felt like she was missing something. She felt like there was, like, if I have this thing, then I can be that thing I'm supposed to be. Everybody will see that I'm now worthy of being taken seriously. And I asked her, I remember in the beginning, I asked her if it worked. She said, yes, it totally worked. But here's the thing. You don't walk up to people and say, hi, I'm Janaea Barnes and I have an MBA. So the difference really was that she felt more confident because she had that MBA. And we get into this idea of imposter syndrome, and there's lots of different ways to look at it, but I think this is one way that it shows up, is that idea that maybe I don't have the chops. Maybe I need something else to give me a leg up so that people will see that I can do this. So people will take me seriously, or they'll believe that I have the authority, or they believe that I can be the teacher you need, or the guide that you need, or for, in my case, the coach that you need. And so I know coaches who have a million certifications and are just not putting them into practice. And so it's interesting that you also got an MBA in that same vein, where it sounds like you felt like you were behind, you felt like you needed something else in order to get to that next level.
For sure, because I didn't have like 8 or 9 years of business experience, at least big business experience that my colleagues did, the people that I was potentially going to be interviewing against, because I thought I would get an international job at that time after I got the MIBA.
Of course, because you needed to travel. You definitely
Yeah.
needed an international job.
Yeah. So I thought that MIBA would help maybe make up for some of those years of not having gotten real world experience.
Yeah.
But and now I use some of that in my own business, but at the time I had no intention of starting this business. And that took a while.
So what did you do after you got the MIBA?
So I moved back to Southern California, to San Diego from Mexico City, finished up there. Then I worked for another school that was looking to be an international school, and they wanted me as a director of business development. And then I eventually moved back to Chicago and started my second restaurant. No, actually, no. In between there, I worked for I was a marketing director for a division of a Fortune 500 company out in San Diego. So those were the 3 years of my life that I ever got any real big business experience working for a Fortune 500 company, and it was the worst 3 years of my life.
Oh.
Because I guess it's just ingrained in me to work for myself. So here I am.
And then you opened another restaurant in Chicago.
I moved back to Chicago, opened up my second restaurant. And that's when I was coming to the end of my initial 3-year lease. And I was deciding, was I going to sign for another 5 years, or do I sell the business and start at the time what I wanted to be a photo walking tour company? So this was the dawn of digital photography, at least for consumer photography. And I said, well, maybe people will pay me to teach them how to use these new digital devices. And I could create some walking tours here in Chicago and in the city, which where my restaurant was. And it would have been a great place to do it. But Chicago does have limited weather because of the winters.
Yeah.
So I ended up moving out to California. I did sell the business, burned all the bridges, and I moved out to California and became a financial advisor out there, working for a friend of mine so I could have some sort of an income, which again was sales because he didn't give me a salary. I only
Right.
ate what I killed. And so while I was doing that, 2005 to 2008, I had started this doing walking tours there in Southern California where you could do it year round. So I was at the start just teaching people sitting across the kitchen table from them how to use their new digital camera. And then we would go out into the neighborhood and maybe take some pictures, and I'd show them how to download them and stuff. I started creating little classes. Maybe tip for your listeners, if anyone's looking to start a business, one way to test it is to start teaching courses at the local community college.
Mm.
We all get those quarterly magazines from the local, for me, it was City of Newport Beach in Orange County. And I said, oh, there's some guy teaching. He was actually teaching the camera, how to use the digital camera. So I said, I'm going to teach people how to teach them how to see creatively and how to use that camera to take great pictures. Not the camera itself, but
Right.
learning about developing their eye. And that turned out to be great. And it was a great way to test the business, and it morphed into what I'm doing today.
Yeah. So you were doing the finance as your side gig, or I
That was
guess
the
your
main gig.
finance was your main gig,
Yeah.
and the walking tours was your, I guess in a way they were kind of both side gigs because you worked on commission
Yeah.
on the finance. Were you very good at the finance?
I love investing on things for myself, but I didn't like just being a stock jockey. No, I didn't enjoy it at all. So I was looking for a reason to get out. And so the day the financial crisis hit in September of 2008,
Yeah.
the next day is the day that I say I went full time as a travel photographer and international tour organizer, because I burned all the bridges and I said, okay, this is a sign, and I'm going to get out of that business and do this full time.
Yeah, and so just the walking tours in general and the teaching photography, you knew that this was what your heart wanted to do, yes?
Yeah, it was, I couldn't believe that people were paying me to show them how to use their cameras and teach them how to photograph and to take them on trips. I mean, that was incredible to me.
What I loved about what you just said is earlier when I asked you about if you had tried to figure out a business with the travel, but somewhere in there you said like what would the business possibly be? It was so long ago. What kind of business could there be? And
Yeah.
so I love that your brain was working towards trying to find something you loved, but you kept doing these things that were, I mean, the restaurant business is familiar. And I mean, this is what we do as humans. We get scared that we can't figure something out and really follow our passion in the way that we want to follow it. And we fall back on what is familiar.
Mhm.
And here you went, so you got the job with the buddy and the finance, you have the MBA, you have all of these things that are all threads to the familiar, like running the businesses, and they've served you now, so there were no wrong turns. But from the time you started trying to make the business of the walking tours and the photography happen, how long had you been trying to do that?
So I've been doing it about 3 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
And there's no wrong time, but what was the fear? What took you so long to let go of the finance, which you didn't like? We know that sometimes the universe or whatever will dish us something big like a 2008 financial crisis. Or I know so many
Pandemic.
entrepreneurs who finally took the leap during COVID or right after COVID. What was the thing that made it take you 3 years to take the leap and do the thing that you were really liking to do full time?
Well, even after 3 years, I wasn't making a full time living from that side hustle, the photography and tours. But it was a money thing to stay what I was doing, but I really wasn't making that much money there. The truth is, I probably quit about a year and a half into those 3 years, and I just never left. It took me 3 years to leave, but yeah, I wasn't into it, and I was doing much more concentrating on the photography and tours. So I was ready to go, but I'd left. I quit, but I just hadn't left yet.
And I think this happens for a lot of people. I think will they'll have their passion and they'll work on their passion business and they'll kind of check out of the business that pays the bills. But what I've noticed is that there comes a point when you have to take the leap because you still hang on to the job that pays the bills or you think pays the bills. And even if you're not really giving it your all or you're not invested, it's still pulling your attention, pulling your time away. And there's this point when you just have to cut the safety net.
Yeah.
And so you had and started the passion business, and 2008 allowed you / made you cut the safety net.
Yeah.
And so tell me, what were the fears that came up once you actually let go of the finance and thought to yourself, okay, now I have to make this work?
Yeah, it was the fear was I didn't have a whole lot of money saved up when the financial crisis hit and I left this other job where yeah, I wasn't making that much money anyway, but here I am now. I know that I've got potentially no money coming in for a while, for several months until I get this thing moving, and then it takes a while to get it going. It was tough for a while. So, it's not only about increasing sales, but it's about decreasing expenses. And so the easiest thing for me to do was to get out of that flat and go location independent, get rid of all my stuff, all those things holding me back. And that was the best thing I ever did. And it got me through the pandemic as well because I didn't have a retail space, employees and big numbers every month. I was able to weather the storm.
And this is a huge lesson for everybody. So many entrepreneurs I see when I work with them and we break down finances or strategy, they're so concerned about having a big house, having a fancy car, like making sure they have enough money to look the part. And the reality is, so many people are spending so much money on useless things. And when you're starting a business, the best thing you can do is to really keep your finances down as low as possible. I mean, we know the stories of some of the biggest Bill Gates and Steve Jobs and what's his name?
Musk,
Um,
Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos.
Thank you, Jeff Bezos. That's really funny that I forgot his name. But starting the business in the garage, not having the big brick and mortar thing, not having so much overhead, doing things as bare bones as you possibly can. Now, I remember when we talked earlier, you had talked about that transition point with the restaurant of what were the pros and cons of renewing the lease and keeping the business. And one of the things you had talked about was having the big responsibility to employees, having the big overhead of cost, and so much of that. So, what I love about when you finally decided to take the business of your passion to the place of this is going to be the thing that worked, that you were willing to sacrifice in a way that allowed you to get by. And that's a big deal. A lot of entrepreneurs aren't willing to do that.
Yeah, when you've got a big nut every month with employees and space and every office buildings or restaurant spaces, I mean, you've got to do a lot of sales just to cover your fixed costs. And one of the main things when I did that pros and cons list was I don't want to have a retail space like I did with the restaurant. I don't want to have the expense or responsibility of employees. And so those were the main things that I wanted to do with this business. Now I work from wherever my laptop is. I have no employees and I only have to be responsible for myself. And that's a really good feeling.
That's a great feeling. And, it's not the way everybody's going to run their business, but you get to live your passion. You get to travel, you get to help people, one of the things I love about your mission is part of it is that you said it's to inspire you to venture outside of your comfort zone. And we talked about how travel does that. And owning a business, of course, makes you do that. And one of the things about being the wolf, it's really about how do you do it in the way that's right for you. And I'm a big fan of we've got to break through all the fears and the resistance, because it's not so much about that you have to do something. You've already done it. The brick and mortar building and all of that extra responsibility, you've done it. You broke through the resistance of doing it. Like, you could do it if you wanted to, but it's not the right fit for you. So you got to move through and do what was right for you. And I think it's really important, and I talk about this a lot, to remove the resistance to the things that you're resisting. Because once you remove the resistance, you can really be clear on what's right for you and what's not. When you're just like, I hate this because blah, blah, blah. But once you overcome that hate and you can feel neutral about it, it's just, this is the thing I prefer. This is the thing I don't. And as somebody who's being the wolf, you just lean towards what you prefer and create the business of your dreams. What is the thing that you love most about your business and the freedom? I know a lot of entrepreneurs get into business for freedom, and the freedom you have to be able to work from your laptop anywhere.
Yeah, I mean, it allows me to travel the world and scout my trips, lead my trips, stay in between trips. When I try to do 2 to 3 trips in the same region of the world back to back so that I don't have to fly back and forth. So being efficient about that. But being able to do the business from anywhere in the world at any time is a huge luxury for me and allows me to travel and to be doing what I want to do if even if I wasn't working.
Okay. I love that. Being able to come back to your passions. Besides travel, what are you passionate about?
I love small business, reading about it, biographies, and learning about people like you just mentioned, Steve Jobs, and all the interesting business people. And uh, love to read music, podcasts. I'm always trying to learn And I've been enjoying writing books. I've written maybe 7 or 8 books now, and I've really enjoyed writing these last 3 that I wrote over the past year. And that's something that I hope to do in the future because I don't foresee doing this forever. Yeah, physically, it can be very challenging, just all the travel part of it.
Right.
But I'm looking to perhaps move to Europe and base all my trips there. And then everything will be very close to me, and I won't have to be flying around the world doing all these different trips.
All right. So tell us about the books. Tell us how we can get in touch with you. Tell us how we can get on one of these travel adventures, stretch our comfort zone. And for the entrepreneurs out there, it is really imperative that you do things outside of just run your business. I know a lot of entrepreneurs put their head down and they're like, work, 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 work. But you get your best ideas. You come up with the solutions to your problems when you're out doing other things. When you stop focusing, and you let your brain just do other things, that's when your subconscious mind comes up with the magic that is your next $1 million product or service or even business. So it's really important to do things like travel. If travel is your jam, maybe dancing is your jam. But for those entrepreneurs who travel is their jam, and I know a lot of them, tell us how we can get on one of these tours with you.
Yeah, so everything is at continentaldrifter.co. That's my website. You could also find my YouTube channel, youtube.com/continental drifter, where I've got a lot of my travels recorded there. I've got something like 90 videos of my travels there. So if you want to get a feel for me or the trips that I've done in the past, you can go to the YouTube channel. But all my trips are there on continentaldrifter.co. Upcoming, I've got a trip to Lapland where we go and check out the Northern Lights.
Ooh.
Heading to Cuba next week. Got Spain, France, and Portugal in May. Tanzania safari with Zanzibar in June, July. Armenia, Georgia, India, and Vietnam. Those are all coming up this year. So you can get all the information there, pricing, itineraries, all kinds of good stuff. All the podcasts I've been on, blog posts. You can purchase the books there. So
Oh, great.
a lot of good information.
One stop shop, continentaldrifter.co.
That's right.
Open up the browsers, everybody. Type it in, continentaldrifter.co. What are the books again? Tell me the books you wrote this last year.
Yeah. So this is actually a bundle of 3 books in one. So these are the 3 books that I wrote. One is How to Be a Mindful Traveler, Deepening Your Travel Experience Through the 5 Senses.
How
So that's
cool.
using your senses to take in the place, whether you're traveling or at home. You can do this at home, of course.
Yeah.
But the reason I wrote this book is that because as a photographer, I'm probably the worst person with regards to being mindful and intentional or being here now. I'm constantly looking at these places through the viewfinder of a camera,
Right.
and that's just such a waste. I wrote my first book years ago, and the last tip in the book, it's a photography book, is put the camera down.
Yeah.
And it probably should be the first tip in the book, but we're the worst photographers. So put the camera down and spend time traveling as much as you are photographing. But the other one is a travel activity book for adults. This one has things like word searches, crossword puzzles, mazes, adult coloring pages, inspiring travel quotes. You can write notes, and there's gratitudes. So there's 60 gratitudes for
Oh, wonderful.
travel. And then the other book is 60 affirmations for travel and has adult coloring pages and journaling pages too. So
Right.
I put all these books into one. So if you wanted the complete version of all 3 books, that's this one, but they are also available individually for sale.
And a couple of just really quick things about that. One, when you're traveling, you're stretching out of your comfort zone. One of the best ways to feel more comfortable and feel more safe when you're a little freaked out about something not going the way you want it to go is to get into a state of gratitude. If you can get into a state of gratitude, your mind opens up creatively and you can start to problem solve in a way that's different than when you're feeling fear. And that other piece about being mindful is so important because, again, when entrepreneurs are out doing other things, the more present you are in the moment doing the other things, the more likely you will have aha and epiphany moments that will solve your business problems. And so that book, I think, is going to be very useful for many of my entrepreneurial travelers.
There you go.
And for the entrepreneurs who need a little support in growing their business and they want to have fun doing it, right? This is what we're talking about feeling passionate about your business, whatever it is. I've got a free guide. You can grab that at bethewolfgift.com. And it's got the 3 secrets the business gurus never talk about. So open up the browsers. You've got continentaldrifter.co, bethewolfgift.com. Now, Ralph, knowing what you know now in the world, that young man who traveled around the world after your first business, knowing that it's possible to make a business out of travel, what would you say to him that might have led him to finding and making a business out of his passion sooner?
Yeah, that's a tough one, because like I said, it was a lot about the internet, the Wi-Fi, everything coming together, digital photography, so that the timing was right. So it was a lot about being patient, investing young at that age, which I didn't do. And every older person tells you, invest young, invest while you're young. None of us listens. Youth is wasted on the young, or at least I didn't listen, I should say. I shouldn't speak for everyone. Yeah. So investing young and knowing that it's going to happen, being patient and persevering. You have to get up just one more time than you're knocked down.
Yes. And so what I really hear in that is that the patience is key. Some of my clients are very young, 22, 24, and they are just like, I don't know why I'm not like making $1 million yet. They're so impatient, thinking they're supposed to have it all figured out. And I think your journey, my journey, a lot of people's journey, even though there may have been a lot of wrong turns that took us away from our passion businesses, I think it all works out in the end. And I think you said it, the trusting that it's all going to be okay. And I'd even add to that, just keep your eyes open for the possibility and just keep trusting that every skill, everything you pick up along the way will serve you at one point. And
Every mistake you make, every business, every failure you have is simply a step towards that success.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. I think that's a great place to wrap this up. Ralph, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your twisty-turvy journey. I make up new words on this show. Thank you for sharing your twisty-turvy journey. And remember, everybody, when you unleash the power of you, humanity evolves. We'll see you all next time on Be the Wolf. Bye, everyone.